Now the Chinese ministers and Hu Jintao were sitting around the boardroom wondering how they were gonna spend all the money endowed by the United States of America. Hu Jintao says we've accomplished a lot, we make everything they use and nothing they do not, and they owe us more money than they've even got, so we need to start thinking big. And I've been told, for what it's worth, when you're up in space and look down at Earth, the only thing you'll see on its entire girth is our own Great Wall of China. But from down here, when you look up in space, the greatest accomplishment of the human race is up there staring us nightly in our face. It's the moon with the American flag on it. So what I'm proposing now is to undertake the greatest construction project of the human race. We're gonna build a new moon in outer space, and it's gonna be painted red. Communist red. So that enormous country and all its facilities and almost 2 billion people worked by degrees to commit their industrial output to guarantee there'd be a red China moon by next summer. I.M.Pei designed it, bigger to brag. It had 5 gold stars on it like on their flag, and it could light up itself, so it had the upper hand over the American moon and its phases. They worked faster than you've ever heard of, so soon enough it was up there shining above, and the whole wide world fell in love with that beautiful red China moon. And because it was light, half the weight of the moon, and it was redder than the ass of any baboon, it could orbit much closer and you could see it at noon. They could use it for advertising. Its surface was the biggest LCD panel ever made, so when the moon was floating over the United States, they could advertise for products handmade by the biggest prison workforce in the world. Hu Jintao says to himself one day, there are tourists who've been to Rome and Pompeii and everywhere else there is to stay, but they've never been in outer space. So they fixed up the red China moon real nice with hotels and malls and merchandise, and you could travel up there for a price, something only rich people could afford. To counteract space's atmospheric vacuum, they manufactured an enormous transparent balloon to go completely around the red China moon, and they filled it with sweet-smelling air. Gravity on that magnificent dome was only half as much as it is at home, so rich fat people could easily roam all over it without getting tired. The richest 1% and other elite were joined up there by the morbidly obese who decided eventually they wanted to lease a permanent home on the moon. And you've always heard about the rich and the poor, but now there was something unlike ever before. The bank accounts weren't just going offshore, they weren't even on the planet anymore. And tax laws had not been put in place to tax people who live in outer space, so the richest people on Earth, they moved there in haste to live tax-free on the red China moon. With the haves on the moon, the have-nots down here, people were saying that the end was near. We've never been without the rich, and we fear 'cause we've been told they're the job creators. Oh yeah, it was rough at first, I have to admit, because the rich had paid taxes, even MIT. Not much, only 13%, but still, it had come in handy. Then after a while, people figured out that the rich weren't as useful as we had heard about. In fact, they were something we could do without. Earth was a better place without them. The CEOs of the planet's new business made good money, but nothing outrageous, and banks were satisfied with safe investments, so things ran with fewer ups and downs. And a gallon of gas or a bushel of potatoes were not gambled as commodities by speculators, and the prices were the same next year and later. Inflation was never a problem. When the head of a business is not overpaid and the workers get more for the products they made, everybody has more when it comes to payday. The whole world became middle class. But those fat cats who moved up to the red China moon, they didn't survive. Their end came real soon. They had no one to garden and no one to prune, and they didn't even know how to cook for themselves. The rest of us, the 98%, we're living on Earth the way it was meant, and we look up at night, but we seldom lament the loss of those 2%ers. Now if you're wondering why you haven't heard about the red China moon and the changes it spurred, and you look around and notice that it never occurred, well, that's because it happens in the future. But the future isn't something that's preordained. It changes all the time by the stresses and strains of the actions we take from California to Maine, and one of those actions is voting in November. There are two futures that could come to pass. There's a future that will reinforce the middle class, and I hope by now you don't have to ask which candidate can deliver it. So when you go to vote, and I hope that you do, remember the story about the red China moon, and maybe you'll be humming the following tune. It goes a little something like this. Take a flying leap at the moon, Mitt, take a flying leap at the moon. Take your lies and your hate and your offshore accounts, put them in a hot air balloon. You got nothing new to sell us that hasn't already failed before. Just take a flying leap at the moon, Mitt, we don't believe your lies anymore. Take a flying leap at the moon, Mitt, take a flying leap at the moon. Take your lies and your hate and your offshore accounts, put them in a hot air balloon. You got nothing new to sell us that hasn't already failed before. Just take a flying leap at the moon, Mitt, we don't believe your lies anymore.